Hello folks, welcome to today's VMware Cloud on AWS Architect Office Hours. Just a couple of us online right now. It is the 30th of June, so last day of the month really. And we will just be covering not really a huge amount of big news this week. We'll have a bit of a round table, find out what people are up to, what's going on in the world. And then we will just call out a few features from the roadmap as we normally do. Got a few other people joining in now. So hey Annabella, hey Ernest, thanks for joining. You are muted, but you can unmute yourselves if you do want to talk. And as usual, please feel free to ask any questions either via chat or Q&A in Zoom or chat via Twitch if that's how you're watching. And if you're catching this on YouTube, please add some comments below. Anything you'd like us to talk about in future sessions or any questions that we raise or things you want to go into a bit more deeply, then feel free. So I was just taking a quick look at the release notes earlier, and I noticed a couple of things that we haven't really dug into the release notes for a little while. So I just thought I'd call out a few things I've noticed, and maybe we can have a bit of a chat about them. Unfortunately, one of the features that I'm first going to talk about was something that came out on the 12th of June. And I say unfortunately, it's because our lab doesn't allow us to actually sort of dig into it in any great detail. We don't have enough hosts or enough budget for enough hosts, so we can't really do it. But the Edrs scale out for stretch clusters. So I'm guessing that most of you know what Edrs is, and those that don't, it is the kind of distributed resource scheduler, but across the nodes, and this now works across stretch clusters as well. So when scale out operations occur, so if we just have a quick look actually in our Sddc, let's have a look here, and we can have a look at the Edr settings. So you can set this for based on performance or lowest cost from a memory and CPU perspective. And as you hopefully all know by now, that it's automatically on for storage, and there's nothing you can do about that. So this now works for stretch clusters as well. So something that was missing previously. Any feelings, opinions on this at all? Pablo, Demarcus, anybody online? Anything that crops up with this at all?
Not actually. No.
Cool.
I didn't find not so much issues right now with this one. So.
Okie dokie. It's something I know has kind of been asked for, so I'm glad to see it's in there now.
Well, there's one thing about I think someone else brought this up about it's kind
placement.
of like you said, it works for stretch clusters.
Yeah.
But it says the minimum size is 3. I don't know if that would change if it was a stretch, because you can't have an odd number of hosts in a stretch cluster.
No, absolutely. So I'm guessing it would be 3 on either side, right? Either side of the stretch. Yeah. So yeah, good point. Having to have even numbers. Actually, interestingly enough, I do have a customer that currently has an oddly balanced stretch cluster, and have been running that way for about a month now. And this is the reason I bring this up is in the hope that they listen to this. No, it's just raising it in case anybody else sees this scenario, right? They've been running in an unbalanced stretch cluster for a while now due to a provisioning problem that happened during an auto scale out activity, and actually we've kind of notified them a few times to either remove the host on the failed side or add another, but we're kind of waiting on their feedback before we kind of step in and do this automatically for them. Because the last thing we want to do is obviously impact their running workloads unfairly. So, but yeah, so you may see this happen, but it's not a normal situation. Unbalanced stretch clusters are not a thing that you can do. So if you do add nodes, then they have to be equal number per side. I don't know if anybody else has ever seen a non-balanced stretch cluster before. That's certainly only one I've come across. I'm guessing no.
How would that even work?
Yeah, not very well is the answer to that, Zach. Like I say, it was caused by an error, actually. So it's not something they've managed to do themselves intentionally. It just happened due to a failure. But yeah. Now the one that I don't know if we kind of spoke about it before, but and it's actually from the 8th of June, so it will have been in the release notes when we had our last call. But it's the vCloud Director Service, or VMware Cloud Director Service, should I say? Now, does anybody know much about this at all? I don't want to sort of, flog a dead horse or anything, but if nobody knows about it, I'm happy to talk about it a little bit, or even maybe talk about some of the pros and cons of it, or the differences. Does anybody have any experience of this at all?
And I've worked on vCloud Director itself, so I have familiarity with that, but I haven't delved into it on VMC yet.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. vCloud Director is an old famous solution from VMware.
Yeah. one of the best, I would say. One of the best solutions we made.
Exactly. Only for service providers right now. But
so a long-running
right
discussion. So interestingly, so the VMware Cloud Director Service is most definitely for
service providers.
Service providers and partners, more so than when you I call it an on-prem version, but the non-this version, in the sense that the way it works is, although it's kind of VMware Cloud Director on top of VMC, you as an end customer, the reason it's partner delivered is you are effectively getting multi-tenant carve up of a bigger solution, and you don't get to see the cloud service portal in the same mechanism. So you get that kind of multi-tenant separation, but you only see your workloads in effect. And it would only be possible for a hosting partner to really provide that. Maybe some of the larger enterprises, but there's no real need for them to do it. I don't think, not in the same way that they have a justifiable argument to use VMware Cloud Director themselves, as opposed to VMware Cloud Director Service. But yeah, it's effectively putting that multi-tenant capability on top of VMware Cloud on AWS, so customers can buy, depending on the service provider, units of compute and storage, etc., or a VM, or that sort of thing, rather than having to buy the minimum 3 nodes and deploy their own SDDC. So it kind of allows for a more granular carve up of an environment for those people that don't necessarily want to have a whole SDDC and just need a couple of VMs worth of compute, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm watching this one quite closely. I really want to see how this takes off. I see there's a massive market for it, and it's pretty much a pure partner play. I can't really see, like I say, any of the enterprises wanting to add the additional layers of complexity in there. That this wouldn't really give them any difference. The only potential reason I could see would be from a billing perspective, like charging back to their internal customers, but that's kind of sort of possible already through the what's the partner portal called again? Somebody correct me. My brain's gone a bit dead, but the I want to say MSP, but the layer on top of the cloud service portal that gives the ability to create tenants, which is a billing construct, as much as anything else. But yeah, I'm quite interested to see where that one goes, actually. Sort of getting the ability to have bite-sized bits of cloud. It's quite interesting. Moving on to more recent announcements, the one that's been hotly asked for and awaited for is the i3EN host type. Sorry, i3EN Metal, to give it its proper name, which is moving forward going to be our kind of default offering for larger storage. It does have larger compute capability than the i3N as well, but it's targeted at people that need a larger storage capacity host. And I think from costs, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but from kind of a cost standpoint, you sort of get 4 times the amount of storage for about 2.4 times the cost per host. So this, as you can imagine, will then become a replacement for, or is a replacement for, the R5 host type that sort of exists out there at the moment, which was backed by Amazon EBS. So this is more of a true vSAN host rather than a vSAN shim on top of the Amazon storage. Thoughts on this one, anybody? Anybody have any sort of strong feelings for or against the i3, or scenarios where you imagine it would be a good fit or a bad fit particularly? But don't all talk at once, because it becomes a bit overwhelming for me.
I just looked at the pricing page, and it says it's not available.
Yeah. Like I say, I think it is around the 2.4 times.
Oh, it's not available in the region. It's only available in 2 regions right now, right? Or
correct,
Oregon and US East.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it does have the pricing, and it's a little bit more than 2x.
Yeah. Now this isn't like you say, it's not available everywhere currently, and this is going to be rolling out. So if it is something that you're interested in, then do reach out to your VMware account team, your representative, your customer success team, whoever you actually deal with on a daily basis, and we'll be able to give you a more update on availability in your region if it's not one of those select regions. So yeah, technically though, any sort of feelings for or against, or scenarios where this would be a good or a bad fit that anyone can think of? How about if you look at the cost of deploying your first SDDC? So when you deploy your first SDDC, obviously the first 3 nodes in a non-stretch or 6 nodes in a stretch cluster are where the management environment sits, right? So I guess you could argue that larger hosts mean more compute and storage for additional workloads, that because the management workloads are taking some of that up. But what about if you're intending to deploy instantly large clusters, like 60 node clusters and multiple of them? It wouldn't necessarily then make sense, I guess, for having a dedicated management cluster of such a huge host capacity type, right? Maybe you want to deploy i3 as your management cluster and then deploy additional clusters as i3n for the increased capacity, maybe. And although it does also come with greater bandwidth as well, is it 50 gig per node instead of 25?
I think it's
100 gig, yeah. Yeah, sorry, good point. So although it does come with that increased bandwidth, you're kind of in that more eggs in less baskets scenario again, aren't you? So there is always that argument of larger, more smaller hosts or fewer bigger hosts, and I'm not saying I have a preference either way. I think it's something that you need to take into account when planning and designing. I have seen some from a numbers perspective, based on large use cases, I've seen some arguments that it's cheaper in some scenarios than more i3s, but then you do then have let's for example, there's less NICs available across your cluster. So if you have a problem with a NIC and a host, then you've got more workloads that have to be rebalanced somewhere else. So yeah. Oh, thanks, Ernst. It's 25 gig, not 50 gig. Thank you for calling that out. Always useful to have people online to correct me when I just make stuff up. So yeah. But still greater bandwidth. Are you sure? Actually, are you sure about that, Ernst? That it's 25 gig per host? Oh, it'll gradually expand until it's 100.
25 is the current speed.
Yeah, 25 is current. VMware has promised to gradually expand it to 100 gig, but at the point, I believe at GA, we're going to go with 25.
Interesting. Okay.
The card itself supports 100. I mean, that's just the AWS hardware.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as what you can performance, I guess will be to be decided on initial launch.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see at what sort of rate they intend to release that as well. I guess more testing required, really, but whether they intend to, make it faster with every milestone release or what. But yeah, thanks for correcting. I wasn't aware that we were going to artificially sort of constrain it at release. So the other news that I had was a fairly rapid increase from 1.10 v4 or M10 v4 to v5, which kind of was a bug fix release really. So all new releases are sort of going to be on M10, although 11 is out and has been since the 5th of June. You kind of have to do a special request to get the M11 release. So current releases are still M10 v5. And again, if you need that release, if there's a feature or something that you desperately need, then that's going to be a request via your VMware account team, I guess, or whoever you normally
mainly
do.
to preview
the VTC, yeah,
which is our rollout of the transit gateway.
Yes.
It does not include I3E and
no. Which wouldn't matter anyway if you weren't in those initial areas like US West and East where it's available anyway. The i3N, but yeah. So it's, although you may, for those of you that may have heard rumours of M11 being out, it's out, but not really for everybody right now. And that sort of also ties into our new upgrade thing that I think we may have mentioned on the last call, where we're doing even releases, correct? So although there might be an odd release like M11, the next major release that people will be upgraded to as part of the managed service will be the even release of M12, and then M14 and 16 and so on. And primarily it'll be bug and other security fixes available in the interim, I guess. And again, a special request if there's a definite feature or fix that's required. Digital Sunshine Solutions, you asked a question, or you've put in Twitch, did I miss it? But I'm not entirely sure what you are referring to, so if you can just ping us the question again, and we'll try and answer that for you. But yeah, so that's kind of the roadmap review. There's also something else that I had a chat with a few people about this morning that's been around for a little while now, and that's the interoperability of Hcx with on-prem versions of Vsphere and NSX. So we, as some of you or all of you may know, we have a platform on-prem called VCF, VMware Cloud Foundation, which includes vSAN, NSX and the like. And the latest release, I think it's 4, is it the latest release? Includes NSX 3, NSXT3 and Vsphere 7, and actually there's an incompatibility, so something to do with the VDS, I think, that's not compatible with Hcx. So if you happen to be VCF on-prem and VMware Cloud on AWS and you use Hcx, just have a bit of a read up before upgrading your VCF to the latest version. However, because of the Hcx release cadence, you are kind of forced to upgrade Hcx, don't forget. So I did just want to recall out something we've called out a number of times before, and that is supported release. So it's current -3, I think. Does that go back to 4 on that one? Where anything older than 4 releases ago, you're kind of out of the support window. So if you run into a problem, you're going to have to upgrade your Hcx release before support will really do anything for you. That'll be their first recommendation. And as it says in the release notes here, that R131 is the oldest version suitable for an upgrade. So anything earlier than that, and you're going to have a bit of a painful time sort of getting on the latest version, I think. Now, anything else anybody wants to raise from the release notes, or anything anybody wants to talk about that's come out of late, from any of the new features, any issues you've seen, or any cool stuff that's come out at all?
There's one thing I've been looking at lately is the webhook integration with the notification gateway.
You read my mind.
That came out actually a while back, but it's still, it says it's in preview. It doesn't really say anything otherwise. What is the reason why I want to bring it up is because it's not, there's no documentation on it.
Yep. So interestingly, there's no formal documentation on it. You're right. I've set it up for our lab and for a few of our customers because I think some of the notifications that come out are pretty interesting, pretty useful. So you see when we do, I'll just try as we're talking to dig up the link, and if somebody can put it in chat for me to the documentation on VMware Docs that talks about the notification gateway and shows the kind of notifications that come through. We picked some stuff up over the weekend actually where a customer had an issue, and obviously when you're not necessarily going to be reading your work emails and stuff, but you may see Slack notifications or Teams notifications, for example. So I know William Lamb has written a blog post on getting the notifications sent out to Microsoft Teams, which look pretty cool, and we've got it set up for sending out notifications in Slack for our lab, as you can see on screen now. But yeah, do you have any more information about it that you want to share, Zach, or is it just kind of highlighting that it exists and you're looking for documentation? Or
yeah, I just wanted to let people know if they want to use it. There is that blog post. It's not a VMware blog though, so I kind of, even though it's him,
reticent to share it.
Yeah. Just because. But I guess I'll say if anyone wants to use it, we can reach out to your CSM. We should be able to provide you the API spec.
Yeah,
it's pretty simple and straightforward.
Definitely, it's a good shout, and I think that it's pretty useful. We also now have a kind of the capability to filter slightly on it. We were seeing initially, obviously, it's a bit like when you install any monitoring software. As soon as you install it, you kind of get swamped by notifications and things coming through. So it's something that you kind of live with for a while and then work out how to make it work best for you. But yeah, I think it's a very useful thing, just having those kind of notifications that stuff's happening, because obviously it's a managed service, so you're not necessarily going to be aware of things that are happening in the background to the service, like upgrades to the management objects in your org that don't require downtime, things that happen that like for example updating management virtual machines notify you, and it gives you the org name and the resource name and the time and date stamp it happened and that sort of thing. So it's pretty useful stuff. I was just trying to dig out William Lamb's information as well. Actually, I think there was quite a good sort of article about how to get them pushed. I think he does it to Teams, and he's written a command literal
Power CLI module to make it easier to set up too.
Yes, I think that's what. Yeah, this is what. So he's got them coming out to Teams, as you can see here. But yeah, so definitely go and have a look. It's interesting stuff, and if you do need some help, like Zach says, give us a shout, and we can point you in the right direction. Hopefully, the team that own and update the notification gateway stuff will be publishing something soon. I did see the question asked, but I haven't seen an answer as to when they're looking to do that. Have you, Zach?
No, I haven't. I didn't. I mean, it's been out for 3 months, so
yeah,
kind of seems. I mean, like it said, it still shows it as preview, so I don't know.
Well, let's hope it's not like a Vsphere feature which says preview for about 3 years.
Yeah. It'd be nice to get the API out there at least, and then maybe a couple more blogs to show how it's used. I mean, you could use it for any application that supports webhooks. So in the example, they show Slack and Teams, which is moderately useful if you're sitting there watching Teams all day. But if you would rather have it like, I think a lot of the ticketing software
Yeah.
Supports
They-
webhooks, so you could use it to generate tickets, so you could get, you know, an alert as opposed to just a Slack notification. Or
It's a good shout actually. So automated change control stuff where
Yeah.
you're not really doing it, but it's cataloging it so that you've got an audit trail later on when when you go back. If there is a problem, you can go back and see what happened and who kicked jobs off and stuff. That's pretty useful. I was just actually gonna. I hadn't even looked or thought to look, seeing the API Explorer to see if anything was listed in there, but I didn't think I'd ever seen anything there specifically for notification gateway stuff. But
I looked at it yesterday and I did not see it. But we have it internally. I think we're all right to share it. I talked to Michael and he said he sent it to some customer stuff.
yeah, I know we've set it up for some of our customers as well on when we've got like shared Slack channels and stuff. Like I say though, unless you're filtering, it does very rapidly fill up those channels. As some of my colleagues like Claire, who's on, will attest to. I think she ended up having to create a new separate channel for non-notification gateway chat. Cool. Okay, thanks for that, Zach. So anything else anybody's seen or has any questions on of late that you'd like to dig into more, or any queries about? I'm just quickly checking the chat panels and Q&A stuff here. If not, what we will do is we'll do our usual sort of early on roundtable to see what people have been working on, and then I'll talk about some stuff that I've been let's call it struggling with for a little while, which I think some people may find quite interesting. But yeah, any questions from out there at all? And on Twitch, Digital Sunshine, did you ever think about what it was your question was going to be, or? Nope. Okay. Right, well, Pablo, then, I'm going to reach out to you, ask you what you've been working on, what you've been playing around with in the last couple of weeks. Anything interesting?
Yeah, I was working in some design regarding the next feature that we will have on the BTGW. As you know, because there are some questions for many customers right now, is asking about that and on the TGW, and I don't know if we have published the roadmap about our when it will be published or not. I don't know if it's public or not. You know, as I was wondering right now.
The actual formal GA of the managed TGW, or
yeah, I know. Yeah, I know when you see it, but I don't know if it's right now.
I was just going to have a quick
Public.
look actually.
I was wondering before I start to saying something.
Yeah, good shout. Okay, so it's not listed as preview right now. That's interesting. I don't know.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I think we are sharing some details. Okay, not going in deep details, but I think right now is we are deploying the M11 version. No, so it's the official deployment right now.
Yep.
And there is the possibility, if the customer wants to start to test it, just ask internally. Okay. And we can, let's say, approve and validate that just for testing purposes, not for production environment. So no support on that, let's say. It's not a recommendation to start to test with the TGW, which will add a lot of features right now. So mainly in the next version, it will be this summer, okay? But I don't know the specific date, but the main thing is we will be able to connect the BTGW to different TGWs, okay? And this TGW could be connected to the direct connect gateway, which allows to connect the direct connection, not till the customer. It's not end-to-end, okay? Because it has to be connected to AWS router and to the customer router, which is on the DX location. So this is a service provided by different companies like Equinix and so on. So the customer needs to talk with their provider, okay, and ask about which kind of solutions they have, okay. So let's say, for example, a customer can have MPLS connected or multiple of them to a DX location, and from here to the DW, it will be like a direct connect. Okay, so it will add low latency connections and more capabilities. Okay, so it's something interesting. I don't have no one slide right now because I think right now they are more like confidentials, but
So we on the last call, actually, I think you may have been on leave on the last call that we posted to YouTube as well. We had Gilles Chacroun give us a quick sort of run through for the call.
Yeah, I'm working
so
with him.
yeah, exactly. So he's if anybody does want a copy of the slides from that last call, you can either obviously go on YouTube and you can watch the whole call, or you can reach out to us and I can provide you a PDF copy of them. They're publicly available now via him, so feel free to reach out. But yeah, it was all
publicly. No, I have it.
Ah, cool.
No, the problem is that I was not testing with skills if they are public or not. Okay.
Yeah.
So we know about that. So.
Well, they're his and he's offered them out, so who am I to argue with him?
No, I'm working with him in some customers, so it's good to have Gilles obviously in every project. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. So maybe for when we end this summer, we will have all these capabilities ready to use. So it will be.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get it. We can start playing with it in our lab as well, actually, so we can have a look and start doing some different design scenarios in there as well, and then maybe we can do a call on it. But yeah, so cool. Anything else, Pablo? I guess that's your.
No.
Yep. Demarcus, you see, you look at that. You came off mute early because you knew I was going to shout you out.
Yep. How you doing, Will? I'm working on been having a lot of I3EN discussions with my customers. One customer in particular is very storage bound. They have one of their clusters is maxed out at 16 hosts, and they're trying to determine on what's the best strategy for either deploying another I3 cluster and trying to split the Oracle workloads between the clusters, or reducing the size of their cluster by going to I3ENs, right? So that's a conversation that I'm having.
Did you say that was an Oracle cluster that they were?
Yes.
So it's an interesting one, right? So are they? I guess that's going to be quite a bit of work if they're at 60 nodes already to stretch that, to split that cluster up, or is it?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's going to be quite a bit of work. So right now, what they're doing is basically just trying to keep the cluster. They're decommissioning certain things and trying to keep the space from growing, because they've been growing so much that they keep exceeding the storage capacity.
Yep. And so autoscaler keeps kicking in, does it, and sort of adding nodes on. Yeah. So I've had a similar situation actually with a couple of my customers where they've their own customers have sort of been rapidly deploying on the platform and push them beyond the storage limits, and the autoscalers kicked in and taken them over that 16 node boundary. What I haven't yet seen is like a hard stop. I've not seen an autoscaler fail to deploy because it's hit a certain number of nodes. Now, technically speaking, we know that a Vsphere cluster can be bigger than 16 nodes. So there's no arguments there, because we see it on-prem and we know what the on-prem Vsphere config maximum looks like. But we also know that VMC is a managed environment. Therefore, we've put an artificial hard limit in and actually blocked you manually deploying more than 60 nodes, because it leads to other issues in the environment, right? So, but I've not seen autoscaler fail. Have you seen autoscaler fail for this customer, or does it just keep on adding nodes, or are they on it and every time it adds 1 or 2 nodes they immediately start reducing it down again?
Yeah, it keeps adding. This customer got up to 22 nodes in the cluster.
Wow.
So yeah, I haven't seen it fail yet.
Interesting. So, I mean, I wonder at what point we would, whether we've even put an artificial autoscaler limit in there as well. That's something I'll try and find out about, actually. obviously like an artificial limit like we've manually put on there. We put in there for manual expansion, but yeah, I don't know if there's an auto-scaling limit. I guess as soon as there is, then we're in that scenario where if we put a limit in and then performance is affected drastically, then we're affecting running workloads for a customer, right? But similarly, if they're not on top of management of it and they're growing beyond the posted maximum cluster size already, it's a difficult conversation, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing is, I've had conversations with customers who want to just deploy another cluster in their existing Sddc with i3ENs, and then they imagine just migrating their management components from the i3 cluster to the i3EN, which is they can't do, right? So that may be something that some customers inquire about, but that's something that cannot be done.
So just the management elements onto i3EN.
Well, they wanted to deploy a i3EN cluster.
Yep.
And then get rid of their i3, but the management components, vCenter, NSX,
Sure.
and all that is already deployed, right? Yep. And there's no way to migrate, like let's say for instance NSX manager from, because the customer don't have that ability to migrate those.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It would have to be something that we would do for them if we ever, had that get offered that functionality, right? Which I doubt we would. But yeah, I mean that comes back to that thing I was talking about earlier, where why would you want such big expensive hosts for the management cluster workloads when they wouldn't fill 3 nodes of it, unless actually they go for a large SDDC deployment and those workloads will fill, or there'll be more than 3 i3 nodes, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's an expensive management cluster, right?
Yeah, well, I do have a customer that's deploying from scratch that's going to have i3ENs, so they are going to have that large management cluster.
Yeah, but I'm guessing they also, unless they're dedicating 3 nodes and then they're deploying additional clusters, I'm guessing that management cluster will also encompass workloads that are running in it as well, right?
Yep,
so at least, so at least there's not like loads of wasted capacity in there that they're paying for, which is that other side of the coin. Yeah, it's interesting. So have you done like financial sort of calculations and talked through the different scenarios about pros and cons of each then? Because that's maybe something we can look at diving into a bit more in the future as well.
Yeah, so those conversations are being discussed with their SE and their account team, but they at this point they're kind of at a point where they need to make a decision because that cluster just keeps getting out of control.
Yeah.
So right now for them, cost is kind of on the back burner, but making sure that the SDDC is working functionally for them is more important.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's a difficult one, especially if that's one massive database that's spanning those many nodes and it keeps growing. That's going to be a difficult one to resolve. Cool. Well, keep us posted on that, would you, DeMarcus? I'll be interested to see how that turns out.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Zach, fella, you said you've been doing some looking into the notification gateway. Anything else you've been looking at of late that's interesting?
Oh, that's probably the main thing I've been looking at. I guess the reason why, if you go look at the documentation, it shows some of the so on the right side, email channel.
Yeah.
Not all of the events are sent via email. So that was kind of the impetus driving that. So one of the things that's not sent via email is when there's a host issue, which surprised me.
As in, like there's a failed host, or just any kind of issue with a host?
It's whatever the trigger is in here. I don't remember the exact name of it. But it's something like host problem or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen the one. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because so long if it doesn't affect a running workload, and there's no impact to service, Do you care?
Well, how could it not though? If it has to restart the VMs on another
Well,
host?
yeah, it depends. I guess if it's like a failed host, or we detect a problem with the host, there's two different
Yeah,
sides
that's
of that, right?
that's what it is. Like a failed
Oh,
host
failed
that needs to
host,
be
okay.
replaced. I don't remember the exact. Let me search here.
Not failed. Okay.
Host-
Yeah. All right. Interesting. I would definitely want to know about
the
a failed host.
autoscaler has detected an issue.
Yeah.
So I think that's like if it detects, host, basically host down. It's called host issue detected.
Yeah.
Autoscaler's detected an issue, and that's what kicks in to remediate.
Yeah. Add a new host.
Which
Yeah.
would, to me, you'd have to have an HA event, which would mean your VMs are restarting.
Maybe. I can see some scenarios where it wouldn't be a loss of connectivity of the running workloads, though. So, it could be a disk in that host that's gone bad, and to preserve, just in case, they remove the host to either take it out of the clusters just in case other disks go bad or whatever.
True,
But yeah,
I
if it,
guess you could maintenance mode and hopefully
Yeah.
that would kick it off. But it's kind of a generic thing, so yeah, it's kind of weird that I think they're.
yeah, it's not very granular, is it?
add
It doesn't
that.
actually tell
Yeah.
you what it actually is. I have on this sort of notification issue. I kind of have a bit of a bugbear about this as well, right? So it doesn't. There's some of these activity events. It doesn't really go into enough detail as to what they are, or reasoning behind them, for example. So this is kind of what I was saying about the, once you set up the notification gateway to send out these webhooks, you're going to get flooded with loads of messages. And if the documentation, which we've asked for, if it's not descriptive enough, you may see all these and start wondering, what's going on in your environment, right? Why is POP SSH access being granted or deleted? What is that? What does that mean? So I guess I'd like to see more information around this, or when the message comes out, more information in the message that this notification actually relates to, if that makes sense. So yeah, again, I think that's something several of us have asked for. So it'll be good to see if these docs get updated with that background information, even if it's a link to another site or something providing more info would be good. Cool. So yeah, thanks for that. There's one thing that I guess has come around recently for me due to some of the customer base I'm working with at the moment, and it's around secured and token-based or web-style login to vCenter, which I've talked to some of you about on separate calls. But we know that we can federate identity sources to the cloud service portal, so we know we can log into to this level here, to the CSP portal. It's a bit weird saying CSP portal, it should be CS portal, right? But once you get into here, then the granularity of the roles isn't so great, right? So I'm kind of working with a number of customers and the supporting BUs, of which there are several actually, quite surprisingly, several interested parties internally that are in the chain to enable pass-through authentication to things like vCenter, for example. So at the moment you can federate identity and you can log into here using, groups that sync from Azure AD or your on-prem Active Directory, that sort of thing, or Okta or Ping. But once you're in here and you log in, your roles aren't that granular. So then even if we'd allowed pass-through login to say vCenter, from within here, if I went launch vCenter, even if it took my credentials, what roles is it going to give me currently? So we're trying to do some work in the background to to offer up identity provider backed role-based access into vCenter, but also as you're aware right now, if I do show credentials here, it's going to show me the the username and password to log into vCenter, and it's the cloud admin account, right? So that doesn't really help me from a securing vCenter perspective, or an audit trail perspective. I can log in as an admin and away I go, really, even if I have got my own username and password. So Joel, you've said that we've federated GovCloud console, but you're not aware if it's available for commercial cloud. How do we get that started? Do we just have to ask for support for another VIDM tenant to federate that console? So good question, and it's kind of around everything that I'm talking about right now. So the difference between GovCloud and which is very specific to US federal, right? It's not available outside of the US for any other governments, before anybody else asks me that. But when they log into vCenter, it does indeed do some form of pass-through, but the roles are not very granular again within vCenter. So what you actually effectively get is cloud admin level permissions, but it's for your user account, so your federated user account. And it's also linked to, I think the prereq is you must be using is it Azure AD or ADFS? I think it's ADFS, to be able to log into GovCloud, into the GovCloud console, which then gives you the authentication through to vCenter. So not only are you kind of limited on the directory provider that you can use, you're also then you have cloud admin privileges within vCenter. So it's some way to get in there, and it's a good kind of first step, and it was very much a driver and a prereq for the GovCloud solution. What I'd really like to see in, as you called it, and some people refer to it, commercial cloud or commercial VMC, is full role-based access control from your directory, your identity provider of choice, that does that token-based pass-through login to vCenter. And this is kind of what we're working on right now, and this is what we're hoping to get into the R&D, the development pipeline for release as quickly as we can, really. We're in discussions with the BU about where we can fit it in, but interestingly, there's so many teams involved in it. So you've got the cloud services team that run the portal. You've got the IDM team, the identity manager team. You've got end user computing BU. You've got the VMC, the BU that owns VMC. So there's a lot of interested and interdependent parties that have to get together to make it work fully end to end. Some of which the work has been done as part of GovCloud. Some of which is kind of available because of that work, and then some we're still yet to do. But it's something that I really want to see come out now, because it's not just, if you think about it, it's not just the customers with mandated high security requirements like government and stuff that will want this. Why wouldn't anybody want it? And actually, if we want to think of VMware Cloud on AWS as being a true cloud service, well, it needs to have kind of SAML authentication to vCenter as well, and something that you can do on-prem already. So it's actually due to the management overhead we put onto VMC that's kind of caused the complexity of making this actually work. Did that cover your question, Joel, or did it answer the point you were raising?
Yeah, I'm just looking more for if we could federate the console in commercial. I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can when you do it. I haven't got it set up with our lab actually, but you, in the same way that you, so basically when you do it for the CSP, you get a tenant created for you, a VIDM tenant created for you, which currently is different to if you've got one for Horizon already for end user computing. It would be an additional tenant, and that then links to your login domain details, and then you set up the sync between the two. And at the moment, it's a little bit of a white glove manual process to do it, and there is a KB article that's published that talks you through it. But in the future as well, this is another sort of step that the IDM team want to do, is kind of a just-in-time portion of it. So you don't have to deploy a connector. We don't have to do multiple syncs with a directory service from on-prem or from the SaaS-based directory service. It's kind of a just-in-time provision of like a connector light So, and that auto happens at login time based on the login domain of the person that's logging in, right? So it is in the works. I don't know how quickly it'll happen. Really quickly is how quickly I want it to happen. But yeah, you can absolutely 100% federate the cloud service portal you're looking at right now. It's just it doesn't do that next hop through to vCenter, which is a shame. And interestingly, another feature the IDM team want to be able to do is kind of capture every entry point somebody might hit. For example, if I know console.cloud.vmware.com, or I know vmc.vmware.com, or I happen to have cached the vCenter address, any of those I go to, it should pick up that this is a federated login customer, and then redirect them back round to their directory service login to generate that token to then give them pass-through authentication to all the services behind it, right? So this is something that they're also working on, which looks to be pretty cool, but it will also then mean that there's not a way around the authenticated login process as well, which is not something you want at all, really. Cool. So yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about that at some other point if you like, Joel, offline, or we can go into it in a bit more detail. But as I say, there is a KB article about it. I'll see if I can very quickly bring it up. No. It's going to make me log in, is it? No. VMC Federation. There we go. So yeah, take a quick note of that KB number. So this, as you can see, is quite an involved process. Involves a number of different people from support and Cloud Service Portal SRE, and then the company, the customer, and then VMware support, and then support and the customer and SRE again. So the reality is this can be done relatively quickly, like time frame wise it can be done in a day or two, but often there's hang-ups where the customer has to go back and make changes to their own AD or their own identity provider to allow that hook into VIDM. So that can often be a delay of, like it says here, a couple of weeks where change requests have to go through and enable all that sort of stuff. So, but like I say, hopefully this will be a thing of the past in not too distant future, where it's kind of just-in-time provisioning and all done automatically, which would be really good. Cool. So on that note, if there are no further questions, I'm just going to call out mainly to put him on the hook for delivering it. But one of my colleagues, Ricky's been doing some work with SRM, and he's been promising me for a while that he's going to give us a demo or some deeper dive into some SRM features on an upcoming call. So I won't guarantee it for the one in 2 weeks' time, but hopefully it will be. And if not, I've just embarrassed him and shamed him publicly, so I'm guessing he'll get on it. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining as usual. Thanks for the questions. If you are watching this on YouTube, again, please feel free to add any comments or questions there. This should be published to YouTube within the next 24 hours. Thanks everyone for joining, and I'll speak to you all soon.
All right, thanks, Will.